let me share my screen and we can pick it up from there. All right, so made a few adjustments to the schedule. So let's look at the curriculum. So today we'll be looking at administering consent forms in research. Some of the materials that were covered were moved around because some things we had repeated for emphasis, and so we needed to streamline some of the content. So today we'll cover how to address issues of consent in research, especially when we're doing research in the context of an online survey. How do we ensure that the way we create and administer consent forms meets minimum standards? So that, first of all, requires us to know what are those minimum standards that must be considered when we are doing research, So that's what we're going to discuss today. So these are some samples from, again, the samples I'm going to show you are things. Please, can we mute ourselves? Dr. Obomele Cyril, can you kindly mute yourself? And are you able to mute everyone, Ilya, so we don't have interferences? So the samples I'm going to show
doing that.
Okay, thank you. Purely for educational purposes, it's not meant to put the individuals under the spotlight, but it's just for purely from the perspective of sharing lessons. So these are screenshots of surveys that people shared on WhatsApp groups. So I want to see what we can learn from some of those. So this is one such example. This individual says, introduces themselves, says, I'm a PhD student, I'm working here. This is meant to be consent, right? And please, can we stop making marks on the screen, please? And then there's also a note here. So let me just read out, and then we can look at we can critique some of the elements in here. Introduces their name, which is fine. I am working on a research topic. The topic is here. I wish to kindly seek your response to every of my research questions as contained in the two sections A and B provided in this e-questionnaire. Meanwhile, these questions are mainly for the purpose of this research. I promise that all responses shall be treated with utmost confidentiality. Please kindly note that only Oyo State residents are expected to help with this request. Thank you in anticipation. Please kindly fill the link below to access the questionnaire, and then you have an emoji, and then you have the link. So what are some of the issues with this? This by no means meets the minimum standards for research. Sure, you've provided a name, but you failed to tell us. First of all, it's too informal, right? With all these emojis linking there and all of that, that's too informal for formal research. It's also grossly lacking in terms of details. So what is the purpose of the research? Sure, apart from telling us the topic, what will you do with that information? How will it be used? How will my information be processed as an individual, right? What are the benefits to me for participating? What are the potential harms that might come to me from participating? These are all elements that are missing. And then this is also completely unnecessary. Please kindly note that only Oyo State residents, that is something that you can easily program into the logic of the survey, so that you don't need to share that, because now you're providing an instruction. You're also providing a mandate that is not reasonable. I wish to kindly seek your response to every of my questions. You can't coerce people to answering every question, right? People should know that they can skip questions they don't want, and they have the right to do so. So this is one of the examples. We'll look at more examples to see what lessons we can draw from those. Then this one says, good day to you. Academic and Research Network is inviting all working class nursing mothers, whatever that definition is, to participate in the survey on the topics here. The survey is approved by the ethical review committees provided, which is a step in the right direction. This study will help identify the current gaps and opportunities in promoting help health and well-being and good pregnancy outcomes for, again, working class nursing mothers. So this is an improvement over the last one, because it tells us a little bit about, ethical approval for the study, which is a requirement for research. It also talks about some of the, the overall topic. But again, it fails to identify the issues that relate to me as a participant. The consent form is a very individual document. It's not a generic document. I as a participant need to know what's in it for me by participating in the study. What am I going to get in terms of benefits? What am I going to get in terms of potential harms or risks from the study? What are my rights, right? That is the whole idea behind the consent form. So just telling us the title of your topic, it's not enough, right? And again, when you are creating consent forms, you want to try to avoid overly casual language. It's a formal legal document. So things like good day to you. How do you know I'm reading it in the daytime? How do you know it's not at night, right? So these are minor issues, but they're also very equally important, right? And so it contains some basic elements, but it doesn't meet the full requirements of a research consent. Then this one is very, very casual. Good morning, colleagues. Again, how do you know it's morning where I'm taking the form at that point? I and my students are conducting a research on the responsible use of AI in agriculture. Who is you? Like who is I exactly? And who are the students in question? Please fill it. It will take a few minutes. Post it on other relevant groups. Again, this falls far beyond the minimum standards for what we will need for research. Again, another one says, dear Saoma, we are conducting a study on the impacts of statistics and data towards sustainability of universities and industries. It talks about the time limit. The survey will take less than 7 minutes to complete. Your participation will be highly appreciated and will provide data that will help in fostering synergy between institutions and industries. And that's a bit problematic because this is this will be perceived as coercion by an ethical committee. Why are you thanking me for participating when I have not agreed to participate yet? So it might be considered as you are coercing individuals to participate by already thanking them in advance for participating. The role of a consent form should just be to provide information clearly, objectively, and then when the participants agree, you can thank them at the end for participating in the survey, not thanking them up front in a way that might coerce them into participating. And again, this clearly lacks all of the information that is needed at minimum for consent in research. And then again, this one is, even much more less informative. It talks about the title there, and then again, thanks for participating in our questionnaire. Again, I have not participated yet. I have not agreed to participate. So I'm trying to understand what exactly you're thanking me for, right? The consent is to provide information for the participants to understand the full scale of the project and how that impacts them as individuals, right? So you want to make sure that your questionnaire or your consent form does not in any element appear coercive, right? Doesn't push people into participating in a way that appears a bit manipulative. So let's talk about, okay, having looked at some of those reviews, let's now look at what do we require? What are the minimum standards that are required in a consent document? And how does that intersect with the responsibilities or roles of the principal investigator? Okay, this comes a bit from, these are kind of old slides, so you might see some language. These are presentations when I made in the Office of Science to CDC. So we can just forget about the CDC. This is generalized, applies to everyone. So the responsibility that any principal investigator has towards the research include the following. One, as PI or as a lead author or lead investigator, your job is to obtain basic training on human research protections. Research should be done only by individuals who have business doing research, by people who understand the requirements of research. And that is why for you to do any research, you should at least have taken one course on how to do research in an ethical manner, right? We're not concerned now about the methodology or the science. Now we're just concerned about the ethics. Do you understand the ethical requirements in research, and what those might be depending on the context, right? And so get training for yourself. And this is not a paid venture. It's free. And get training. So you invest 1 hour, 2 hours in getting training. We'll talk about some of those platforms where you can get training. But getting training in ethics is a requirement. So if you are a supervisor, supervising masters or PhD students, it is your responsibility to make sure that your students at minimum get training that, yes, they have covered basic training in research. Otherwise, they should not do research. Again, that's the principal investigator's job to develop the protocol, submit the protocol for initial review and continuing review by the ethics review committee, and to submit amendments or incident reports as they might occur. And at the end of the day, to submit closure of protocol. So it's very common. I've served on IRBs, and people come and submit the initial protocol or proposal for ethics review, but many people forget to to develop continuing reports or close out the protocol. Just like it started, you have to end it. So the ethics committee is interested not just in you starting the initial review, but also the end. Like when the study is over, you must, this is not optional, you must submit a closing review that this is how the study was conducted and this is what we've done. So that is extremely important and required. So here are, in terms of training, like I said earlier, everybody doing research must be trained in the ethical dimensions of research. As a supervisor, it's your job. This is one of the requirements. This is why you're a supervisor, to make sure that your students take the trainings. If you don't take training, then you can't do research. You shouldn't do research because clearly you do not understand how research should be done in an ethical manner. There are two providers that you can use for free of charge. One is Citi. Citi is a collaborative, global collaborative that offers training on different aspects of research. So this is, for example, a certificate that you will get from Citi. Again, Citi, like I said earlier, Collaborative Institutional Training Initiative. It's global. Your institution might be under Citi, or you can just create an account and get trained as an individual. And so Citi has several courses. You don't have to take all of the courses. All I just need is that you take the basic or refresher course. It's 1 hour, right? 1 hour or thereabout on just the very basics of human subjects research. So, and once you're done, if you're a student, I need you to show me your certificate that shows the completion date. It shows the course you took, like this is the basic or refresher course on human subjects research. And if you are part of an institution, then that institution will display, for example, this particular, I took my training under the University of California where I'm faculty. And so it shows University of California in San Francisco, right? And then this can be validated, right? And so there's the link here. I've provided the link here and the barcode for you to get access to Citi and take the training. The second training, which is equally or even more rigorous, is by the National Institute of Health. So NIH has what they call the clinical research training. It covers every single thing that you will take in Citi is also covered by NIH. And of course, NIH is completely free of charge. And the link is also provided here, right? So with these two, I'm sure there are other training programs by other institutions, but these two will provide the very minimum of what you will need to do research, and you get certification proving that you know how to do research. Every ethical review board, if you are a member of an ethics board, should require certification from the investigators. So if from an ethical committee, yes, you have to provide certification that you indeed have been trained on how to do research in an ethical manner, and you can use these two institutions for your certification needs. So the consent is not just a document. Consent is the entire process that is reflected from when you conceive of a protocol to the rest of the project. So when you are submitting a new protocol, there has to be elements of ethics also embedded in it. All of the consent documents that you will administer to participants will also have to be as in that protocol as well. So a well-written protocol should contain the methodology, of course, But it should also have an appendix. You should have a large appendix for your protocol that contains all the ethical documents that will be needed, the consent forms, the questionnaires that will be seen by anything that will be seen by participants in the study has to be included in the protocol. So that will include any letter you're sending or emails that you're sending to them. That will include the consent itself. It will include the questionnaire and every other thing, the recruitment material. If you're going to put a flyer on WhatsApp, if you're going to put a flyer on Facebook, have to see it, right? That is the minimum requirements for submitting a protocol for review to an ethical review committee. And please don't submit multiple documents. Don't say, please see appendix 11 or see document 11. Please combine all of those documents into one long document and submit it. It becomes very, very challenging for one reviewing an ethics application to now start looking through your 1 million attachments. It should be one attachment ideally that contains everything, and then the rest as supplemental material in the appendix section. And please make sure it's grammatically correct and everything is sound. So items to be addressed in the protocol for ethics approval. You want to show that risks to subjects are minimized. You want to ensure that the risks are reasonable in relation to anticipated benefits. Obviously, I don't want to take medication for headache and end up with cancer, right? The risks are completely disproportionate. And so there should be, of course, we expect that there will be risks in every study. The risks have to be reasonable and have to be proportional to the anticipated benefits. The data collection is monitored to ensure the safety of subjects, that selection of participants is equitable, that there's privacy and confidentiality measures in place to protect those, that the informed consent is sought from each subject. And yes, informed consent must be explicitly sought. It's not enough to say that, well, consent is implied. We say, all right, by participating, no, we have to collect consent. And again, there are legal aspects to this, especially in some countries, where you need explicit permission. Yeah, you can't just imply consent. It has to be explicitly sought and obtained and documented. So it's not enough to say, and this is the problem with the examples we looked at earlier, examples like this. The problem is that you may have gotten some kind of consent from participants, but it's not documented. So how do I know that this individual provided consent? What material evidence is there that I agree to participate in the study? So, consent must be documented, again, for legal reasons, right? So that is very important. So you seek consent, you collect consent, you document the consent, and that you ensure that privacy and confidentiality provisions are provided, and that you have additional safeguards in place to protect vulnerable subjects. So now let's focus now purely on the consent process. So again, consent is a process. It's not necessarily just a document. It's a process where the investigator discloses all relevant information and the potential subject has a chance to have questions answered, right? So there's always that opportunity to, if I have questions, how should I address those questions? How should I ask them? So that is a key requirement there. So informed consent is not just the form that will be presented, it's the entire process. The process has to take into account multiple factors such as who is obtaining consent. So again, you have to provide, this is all the information you have to provide, where the form will be read aloud to participants and the decision-making capacity of participants. You want to make sure that there's no exculpatory language. So that is language, for example, that says, well, note that participation at this study, for example, is at your own risk. So should anything happen to you, the investigators are not to blame, right? It's like park here at your own risk kind of language. You cannot include any language that seeks to strip you or to absolve you of any responsibility should anything happen to participants, right? So you can't say, oh, well, you're providing this information at your own risk, and if anything happens, we are not liable. That can never be found, should not be found in any consent document. No ethics committee should allow that to happen. Now, sometimes for very high risk studies, sometimes we need to include a certificate of confidentiality. The certificate of confidentiality is a document, a certificate, as the name implies, that will provide to participants to let them know that the information that provided is legally covered, and not even a federal judge can invoke us to release that information. And you might need a certificate of confidentiality in circumstances where you are doing research on things that border on crime and illegality. So if you're looking at, for example, we did a lot of work in, use of substance, addictive substances, and some of those are illicit substances like heroin or other substances that are regulated substances. So, of course, that is now it's not just a public health issue. Now you are bordering on the issue of crime and legality. People might not feel comfortable sharing such information with you because they're like, oh, what if this study eventually a federal judge says that, well, hand over all the information so that we can prosecute these individuals. So one extra step you can take in such instances is to get a certificate of confidentiality. And so that protects individuals, in knowing that there's no way that, any information they provide, not even a federal judge can cause that information to be unsealed. So that way participants are have peace of mind knowing that they can freely share information with you. So if it's a whole process getting a certificate of confidentiality, and there's, this is just example language I can include in the consent form should you be including a certificate of confidentiality in your study. So now let's focus on 8 minimum. So these are minimum standards, right? Your consent documentation must have this 8 and minimum these standards. So you must have a statement that addresses the research, the purpose, the duration, procedures, and all of that, the conduct of a study. So the purpose of a study is to do X, Y, and Z. That must be clearly stated up front. And take note that this is not just giving the title of a project. It's not just the title, it's the entire purpose of why the study is being conducted. Number 2, foreseeable risks or discomforts that are foreseeable, right? And so every study has risks. Like, no matter how small the risk is, every single study has risks. Even if you're doing an online survey, there are risks. There are risks that individuals might be emotionally distressed at the question. There's a risk that individuals, well, in recent language or modern day language, might be triggered, right? There's also a risk of privacy issues, that the information may be unsealed or there may be loss of confidentiality. So every single study has a risk. So you need, as an investigator, need to look at what are some of the foreseeable risks or discomforts from the study and document them. Number 3, reasonably expected benefits. And please note that providing money or incentives is not considered as a benefit to the study. Incentives are incentives that have nothing to do with benefits. So what are benefits that might accrue to participants from the study? If it's an interventional study, for example, maybe they may have treatment of their condition, or maybe they will have improved living conditions, or maybe they'll have some other things, right? What are benefits? And it's okay to also say there are no benefits to this study at all, as to you as the individual, but the findings from this study might benefit society overall by maybe identifying risk factors for so and so. So you have to spell those out. Again, I cannot emphasize enough, the fact that you're giving them $20 incentives, that is not a benefit. That is just compensation for their time. So if there are no benefits, just state there are no benefits and try to address more societal level benefits. Alternative procedures, if they exist, this is more relevant to the cases of interventional studies. Protections for confidentiality. What measures are you going to take to protect individuals' information? You must explicitly state that. Are you providing compensation or treatment for injury? If there's compensation, you must provide what that compensation is in the consent form as well. You must provide contacts, right? Again, consent is not just a document, it's a process. And when we say it's a process, we mean that, sure, you've provided a document. Now, what if I have questions? Who should I contact? How should I contact them? That has to be stated, right? So, you need to provide that information for participants upfront. So a consent form is incomplete if there is no information about the individual who has to be contacted. So you see all of these documents we looked at initially, they have none of that information, which makes them grossly lacking, because the whole point of the they treated those, the problem is that they treated a consent as a document or as just a bunch of text, which you just copy and paste, or you just say, hey, here's my survey, I promise to keep your information safe. That is not what consent means. It's a process where you provide information to me, and if I have questions, I can call you or text you or email you and get answers to the questions before I can proceed. And there should be clear indication that participation is voluntary and that people can refuse without loss of benefits. This is very important. If you are providing incentives to participants, they should know that you don't have to answer every single question to get those benefits. They should know that if you leave the survey at any point, you can still get the benefits. Otherwise, you are using language that is coercive. Imagine you told participants, you must finish, you must be eligible for this study, and you must answer all the questions to get this incentive. That's a hard no. Because you are compelling people to participate in the study. You are, in other words, coercing them to participate. And so that undermines the very basis of ethical conduct of research. So people should know that participation is voluntary. They can leave at any moment. They can skip any questions they want, they don't feel comfortable taking. And should there be benefits or incentives, they can get those incentives even if they leave at any time. All right, so sometimes you have multi-population surveys. So you might have a survey that includes both adults and youth. So in that case, you must be able to provide the appropriate form. So if somebody is a youth, they can take assent. We don't provide consent for minors or people who are in conditions where they can't legally provide consent. Imagine somebody, for example, is brain dead, or they have some conditions that cannot allow them to have full control of their mental faculties. They cannot legally provide consent in that case. So somebody has to provide the consent on their behalf, but they also have to provide assent. The same thing with minors, children under 18 years old. They cannot legally provide consent, so they have to provide assent. So if your study it's a multi-population survey that has both adults and youth, then you should provide the capabilities for the minors to provide, assent, and the adults to provide consent as well. We'll look at that in a minute. Now, sometimes you might also be doing a survey in multiple countries where you might be providing some consideration in one country. Let's say the settings is different in one country. Let's say the incentives. Some countries do not allow incentives for participants who are participating in the study in a clinical context. So if you are doing a study in a hospital, in some countries, it's not allowed for you to provide incentives to them. So the language you might be using in the consent form might be different from maybe in another country for the same study. So these are some of the practical considerations you have to keep in mind when you are doing your study, so that your study meets the minimum standards and that individuals in the respective places are well informed as to their rights as well as their privileges as participants in the study. All right, so what we're going to do now is create a consent form and look at how the different elements are aligned and what we can learn. But before I do that, I'll pause here and see if you guys have any questions, and I'll take them, and then we can move over to the hands-on part where we'll try and create a consent form together. So any questions?
Okay, hand is raised. Charles, can you unmute and speak? Hello, Charles. Can you hear me? Charles, are you here? Okay. I'm not sure he's here. You can unmute, please.
Okay, it wasn't that option wasn't working. It wasn't what I was saying. Okay, thank you, Prof.
Oh,
Just to more or less reiterate what Prof has said. I think some of the issues is even the supervisors and the old researchers, if I will use that word, don't even see the importance of the researchers taking some of these courses. I've kind of tried to reinforce this even where I'm doing my, currently doing my program, and some people look at us. Well, you always like doing online courses, you like doing things. So for me, so they think it's something that is optional, you know. So, but when you look at it, if you pass through these courses, there are a lot of things you will learn that perhaps even before that course you wouldn't have had knowledge of those things. So thank you, Prof, for even bringing it up again. And I also posted a link there. For some of us, city courses might be paid, because you kind of assess to us from the organization. So that element of payment may not be there for you. But for me, most of the courses in city is they have $ on them. So, but there are other platforms that provide the same training for free outside the NIH, which I have also pasted on the platform. Over.
Okay. I think am I on mute? Can you hear me clearly?
yes, we can hear you.
Okay, all right. So one of the things we can also do is we're affiliated with an independent IRB. So we can also have a set a once a month courses on just ethics and minimum standards, so people can attend that particular course, and that will meet the minimum standards for ethics for the purpose of ethical review. So we'll just put a fixed date, maybe the third Saturday of every month. I'm just throwing out a hypothetical date, for example. And so that training will be purely for meeting the minimum standards for ethics in to the purpose of getting ethical clearance for your research. So that's one of the things we could do, so that for those who don't have money to get certificates from Citi, you can attend that particular training. It's going to be like a 2-hour training that will cover every single thing that you need to know, your responsibilities and rights and privileges and duties as an investigator. And that should provide everything you need to get coverage in terms of what you might have gotten from Citi or elsewhere. So that would provide that minimum standards. All right, any other questions or thoughts?
There's no question in the chat, so I guess we are good.
All right. So what I will do now is to head over to the Chisquares platform and show you how you could create consent forms on the Chisquares platform and then use them in your research. So let's do that now. All right, so for those who are joining for the first time, the Chisquares platform allows you to do all manner of tasks or procedures that have to do with research. So you can collect data on the Chisquares platform, but you can also design other things like consent forms and things of that nature. And again, this is why you want to be very careful with the platform you use for data collection. You want to make sure that it is a platform that has the capability for you to even administer consent in the first place. And so last week we talked about the limitations of forms like Google Forms. The problem here in this kind of cases is that you are using something that wasn't designed for research, to do research, right? That's how you end up with scenarios like this, right? Because those forms, like it's not designed for research, so there's no careful consideration of even things like informed consent. So use the right, the bottom line is use the right tool for the right task, right? If you're just trying to get invite to a party, sure, you can use Google Forms, but if you're going to use, if you're trying to, collect research, human subject research, especially when it's protected information, then you want to consider tools that meet the minimum standards for what you're trying to do. All right, so let's see how you can create consent forms and things of that nature on the Chisquares platform. You should have received the link to the platform. If not, it will be shared with you. If you don't have an account, you can sign up. If you do, you can log in. So there are two ways to do this. So there are two ways to create a consent form on the Chisquares platform. So we'll go through some of those elements now. The first way is to use the AI toolkit. The AI toolkit is, let's say you might be doing a survey on an offline mode, or you want to just create a consent form for some other reason. We have one of the items in our AI toolkit allows you to create a consent form. So in that case, you come here, click on there, and the whole point is that you want to create a consent form that meets the minimum standards, right? It's all about meeting minimum standards. Remember that the consent form is not just an optional document. It is an ethically required document. It is also, very importantly, a legal document, right? So it is not enough to just say, oh, I'm just going to say this is the title. No. It has to meet minimum standards. The consent has to be clear in all those 8 requirements we discussed, and it has to be documented in terms of the data set. So when you collect data, for example, on the Chisquares platform, the consent is captured and also documented. And we're going to discuss that in a minute. So when it comes to the AI toolkit, by the way, this is still in progress. So that's why I have a beta version here, because we're still working on it. But we just didn't want to keep it hidden. That's why we released it, so that you guys can play with it while we still work on finalizing it. So the AI toolkit has a consent form generator, right? The consent form generator is to help you to create a consent form in a way that meets the minimum standards. So let's see how that works and the information that is collected from you. All right, so this is the consent form generator. It has, it's a bit longer than the other tools in the AI toolkit. The other tools in the AI toolkit have at maximum just 2 fields. But since this is a legal document, well, we have a lot of fields so that you provide the minimum information needed. So this helps create clear, comprehensive, and compliant consent forms for your research that ensure ethical compliance with, both local and international standards. So you start by typing the title of your project. Let's say the title of my project is Survey of Knowledge, Attitudes, and Practices regarding tobacco use among Nigerian youth. So let's see, that's just my hypothetical title. The purpose of a project, remember that the purpose of a project is not the same thing as your title. It's like, what are you going to do with this project? How is it going to be used? So the purpose of this project is to gain a better understanding of risk factors associated with tobacco use among youth. This information is intended to help formulate policies at the national level. We aim to analyze the data in aggregate form and disseminate in conferences and scientific journals. So that tells me about why the study has been done. You can use whatever language you want, obviously. the study sponsor, if the participant has a right to know who sponsored the study. If you got money from a pharmaceutical company, well, if you're inviting me to your study, I have a right to know who ultimately is getting my information, right? So this study was sponsored by, let's say, ABC Corporation. This is just fill in the blank. And if there is such a thing as an ABC Corporation, this is not that I'm just saying in general. This is just a hypothetical, corporation. Number of minutes. Let's say this is going to take 45 minutes. How will the information be used? Again, this will be used. This will be analyzed and presented at conferences and in scientific journals. Again, it is you're not doing the participants a favor by providing them this information. It's their right to know how their information will be used. Describe any foreseeable benefits or harms. There is no direct benefit. Study participants. However, the information they provide might help improve tobacco control policies and save lives at the population level. We're always saving lives in public health. Everybody saves lives, participable lives at the population level. Harms. There is a small risk of disclosure of information in this online survey. Again, don't say your study has no harms or no risk. That is impossible. Every study has risk. So again, quantify how much it is. So in this case, this is a very small in this online survey. And it's not enough to just identify the risk. Tell us how you are trying to mitigate or reduce that risk. We are trying to reduce this risk. We will ensure that no identifiable or potentially identifiable information is collected as part of the study, right? So we've talked about the risk that, okay, there's a small risk that people's information might be disclosed, that anytime we're doing anything on the internet, well, that risk is always there. And how are we going to address this risk? Well, we're not going to collect any identifiable information. Now, here, there's also some things that you could generate. Does the study involve invasive procedures like injections? If there are, you can check the box and explain. If not, you can leave it. Has the study been approved by an ethical review board? If so, you check and you provide the explanation. If not, you leave it. Study collects identifiable information. If so, you check the box and you provide the details. If not, I'll leave it blank. Study involves financial incentives. If so, you check and you describe it. So if let's say this study has been approved by the Fair Ethics IRB in Sweden. This is a hypothetical IRB. Now, if you're providing IRB, don't just give us the IRB. We need to be able to trace information. We need to be able to confirm. The principle here is trust but verify. We trust everything you're saying, but you need to provide us information for us to reproduce it. So you have to provide the name of the ethics board, but you also have to provide the protocol number. So protocol number and why, so that we can reach out to the ethics board and say, has this protocol indeed been reviewed and approved by the board? We can't just reach out to them if we don't have a name for the board. And even if we have a name, we can't just reach out to them and say, hey, we are trying to reach out in respect to this study. they're going to ask you what study, right? So that's why you have to provide a protocol number for us to follow up. Protocol number 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, or whatever, right? That's how you want to provide that. And then once you're done, you can then click on provide a consent form, in which case the platform takes all of the information you have given to it, and it will then work on providing a consent form for you that that meets the minimum standards for an ethical review board, right? So that's the one way you can create consent forms. And when it does this in a minute, we're going to look at it and look at the different elements that are captured in the consent document. So we can come back while as a generator, we can come back to this, and then in the meantime, we can go over and see the second way to generate consent forms on the Chisquares platform. But again, this approach is particularly helpful when you just want to, let's say, generate a consent form and maybe share with external parties, or you're trying to just create a consent form for the purpose of just educational purposes, or to share with somebody else. When you're conducting surveys on the Chisquares platform, there is also capability for you to create consent forms as part of the survey. And that's what we want to look at now, right? So how do you create a consent form or an assent form when you are creating a survey? So let's leave this for now. It takes a minute to take all of that information, and okay, that's created already. So let's look at the information provided here. So the date is provided, introduction. You're being invited to participate in a research study titled this, which is being conducted by this Israel Agaku and sponsored by ABC Corporation. So right up front, we're told about the purpose of the study. Take note that it doesn't say, we thank you very much for considering participation. No, that's not what it says, because that kind of language is coercive. Why are you thanking me already when I have not agreed, right? It just says you have been invited to participate in a research study. The purpose of the study is provided next, and how that information will be used. It also provides some information about the study details. The risks and benefits are also provided, and the other information about the consent and all of that provided. My information is provided here. If you have any questions about the study, please feel free to contact the principal investigator using the information below. My name is provided, my address is provided, and my email is provided, right? So that participants can reach out. Remember that consent is not just a document, it's a process. The process is I give you information. If you have questions, you can reach out to me. I can clarify them and provide the answers again to you, and we go back and forth that way. It's not just a static document that you just read and you must agree. So that's one way you can create consent. So here you can then download the document, you can copy the content and use it however you want. Now, let's look at the second way you can create a consent form on the platform. So let's say that now we want to create a survey. Let's start the survey, and let's see how you can embed a consent form within the survey you are creating. So let's start the survey. Let's say the title of our survey is factors, can't remember the title I used earlier, associated with tobacco use among Nigerian youth.
No, that's not it.
So the location is Nigeria, the aims, and let's get AI to generate some aims for us. All right, let's pick any couple of aims, clear the remaining ones. Keywords, let's generate this with AI as well. Nigerian youth, tobacco use, let's clear the remaining ones away. The Chisquares platform has capabilities to support you with your ethics clearance as well. We're affiliated with an independent ethical review board based here in the US in the state of Michigan. And so when you flag any of these things that your study involves them, so let's say we say our study involves youth or children or minors, and it also has maybe some identifiable information, that makes that triggers the platform to be aware that your study might need ethical review. So we're going to see how that manifests. So on the Chisquares platform, you can invite collaborators so that you work with them in a collaborative mode on the study. You provide their email and you assign them a role, let's say senior author. You can add as many people as you want. There's no limit to the number of collaborators you can have. And once you're done, you save collaborators. That sends an email to them and invites them to the project. So here we have this banner. Your study may require IRB approval. IRB stands for Institutional Review Board. I acknowledge that's such a US term. You might know it as Ethics Review Board or Ethics Committee is the same thing. So you can submit an ethics review committee anywhere, it doesn't matter. The NIH and many other regulatory agencies strongly recommend an SIRB or a single IRB. So even if your study is multinational or multi-site, you shouldn't have to have 10 review committees just because you're doing a study in 10 different sites. But different countries or different regions may have different standards, so you should absolutely follow the standards by your organization. Should you want to submit an ethical review clearance from the platform, you click here, you submit, you fill out this form, which describes the issues of identifiability. So choose one option below that describes data identifiability in your study. And there are 4 options. Does not include any direct or indirect identifiers. Direct identifiers are things like name or address or social security number. But indirect identifiers could be also things like your age, right? If you say somebody is 30 years old, there's nothing special about that age. If you say somebody is 120 years old, that suddenly becomes an indirect identifier, because maybe in the whole of that community, there's only one person who is age 120 years old. So that becomes, you know, an issue of concern then that we need to address. So maybe we want to truncate ages above a particular limit, so that instead of collecting all ages at a particular age, we can only say maybe 80 years or older or 70 years or older to protect individuals' confidentiality. So there's also the second option that data will include direct or indirect identifiers, but the research team will remove them upon receipt, which is what we call de-identified data. So de-identified data means that there are identifiers that were collected, but we have removed those identifiers, which is different from the first option, which was anonymous data. The third one is coded data. Coded data is that there are identifiers. Those identifiers will remain in place, but we're going to mask them. So these are different levels of issues of identifiability, ranging from anonymous data where we're not even collecting any identifiers, to the second option of de-identified data where we collect them, but we remove them. The third option is the coded data. We collect them, we don't remove them, we just mask them. And then fourthly, identifiable data, we collect them and we keep them exactly the way they were. So you select which level of identifiability applies to your case. You provide a sample size needed for your study. And this is not just a statistical issue. This is a deeply ethical issue, because why are you going ahead with the study that requires a sample size of 3,000 people when you can only reasonably collect 1,000 people, right? That means your study is underpowered. That means that you're going to expose those 1,000 people to the risks of the study without ever having the possibility of answering the research question. If the minimum sample size required is 3,000 and you can only collect 1,000 people, then why are you going ahead with the study? From an ethical perspective, like those 1,000 people are exposed to the risk, but they don't even benefit society because you will never answer that research question. So that's why the sample size is a very important consideration from an ethics perspective. You have to provide inclusion and exclusion criteria. You have to provide explain the process of inviting participants and obtaining their consent. You have to outline any potential risks for participants and how you plan to mitigate those risks. You have to describe potential benefits for participants, measures to protect privacy and minimize intrusiveness, right? That's very important. Privacy and intrusiveness are related but distinct terms. You may not necessarily be collecting identifiable information, but you may be asking questions that are very intrusive. Questions, for example, about sexual orientation, sexual habits. Do Like, do you really need that as part of a research question? Or do you just want to collect them and maybe in case you might need it, right? Research is never done in case that we need it. Like, is it relevant for your study or not? So we need to consider questions that might be very invasive, right? Even if they're not identifiable. So, you know, if you collect questions on gender orientation or sexual preferences, there's nothing identifiable with that per se, but it's still invasive. So you want to consider both sides of the coin. And then explain how collected data will be stored, retained, and used. And then the members of a team, you have to provide their names, their affiliations, conflicts of interest, and yes, whether they have completed ethics training. If they have completed ethics training, you must upload the certificates for all research team members. As far as somebody is listed as part of a research team, they must have done ethics training. We don't care where they have done it. They must have done it, you know. So once you provide all of this information, you can then submit this to the ethics review committee and it gets reviewed. You can say, no, I don't want to use that. So let's create a hypothetical question, and then let's see how we can add the consent as part of our question. So let's create one question here. Let's start from blank survey and say, what is your gender? Or what gender do you identify with? So let's call this gender. So male, female. Now let's just say other. So that's one question in our survey. So now we have one question in our survey. Now let's add consent and assent. To add consent, to come to questionnaire, you come to consent or assent forms. If you don't have any now, you can click to create. So there are two forms you can create here. The first is a consent form, and this is for adults age 18 years or older. So let's click that, and then you can type whatever you want to type there. The platform also allows you to generate default contents. So you can just click that button, and it gives you the content, right? So then you can edit this content as needed. So, but the content here tries to meet the minimum standards that is required in a research study. So you can add your name and other information here as needed, but this provides the basic minimum elements that you need. So this is how you create a consent form as part of your survey. So you can submit this form, and now your study has a consent, one consent form. But let's say our study involves both minors and adults. Minors being people aged 18 years, under 18 years of age. We can just add a new form. Now this is the assent form we want to add. We can create, again, the default contents here. And this we can add to our survey. So the key element here with the assent is that this language here, by proceeding with the survey, you confirm that you have read and understood the information above, and that you have permission from your parent or legal guardian to participate. Now, that is very important language, right? Because remember that minors cannot give consent. They need the consent of an adult. So here we are saying, okay, you have provided your assent, but this also implies that you have gotten consent from an adult. So, so here now your survey has two elements. It has a consent for minors, as the assent for minors, as well as the consent from adults. So this is our survey here with this required elements here. So we'll go back to the consent and assent forms. We see we have two of them, consent and assent. Now, how does that look like when we take the survey? Let's look at a preview. Let's preview our survey. So here you have to provide, please select your age category. So if you are an adult, you select 18 years of age and you start the survey, it's going to display the consent form, right? You read the form and you can choose to accept the form, accept the language, the terms. Now, once you click accept, what that does is that it captures that information and the time and place where you accepted as part of the database, so that consent is not only provided, but it's also documented, right? So there's tangible evidence of when the individual responded. So you have evidence of that as part of the study there. Now, what if the individual selected that they are a minor? Then they're going to get this is just saying that this is a preview. Then they select minor, start the survey, and what they see is the assent form. And again, it says, I confirm that I have read and understood the information above, and I affirm that I have obtained permission from my parent or legal guardian to take part. Then they can accept, and again, the survey proceeds. And again, the information they capture, they provided is also captured as part of the database. All right, so that's how you implement consent forms and assent forms on the Chisquares platform. Again, I'll stop here and see if there are any questions from what we presented so far.
Thank you, Prof, for the elaborate presentation. We have just one question. The person is asking, how do I cite and reference AI-generated consent form from the Chisquares platform?
You don't have to cite a consent form. That is not necessary. The tool is just to help you to make sure you create it in a way that meets minimum standards. So you're supposed to create it and just use it for your work.
Thank you. Charles, your hand is up.
Yes, thank you, Prof. Just wanted to confirm. So once the minor had assented, kind of that they inform their guardian or caregiver, so that suffices. So they don't need to kind of there's no need for additional consent form from their guardian or caregivers.
It depends on the context, but that's something that you will have to, as an investigator, you will have to figure out what is acceptable. That it's all context dependent. You might want to see whether you want to get an additional form to participants. But all of those things, those are some of the logistics that you may have to worry about in your local context, right? From the design perspective of a platform, it's like, what do we do that meets the minimum standards? So in most large surveys that we're conducting in the real world, yes, sometimes we just say, yes, do you affirm that your parents has given you permission? It may become quite complicated trying to say, all right, we're going to get the permission of the parent or the legal guardian, wherever they are, because we don't have their information. So those are some things that you as an investigator may have to consider in the design of your study. You may now have to add the parent as part of the participants, which is something we've done in other surveys. So let me show you an example here. In this study, let me see if I can fill. So we have this study currently going on in some countries. So let me show you how we've addressed that. This is the consent form, right? So here, this is a survey of youth, right? Youth living with HIV. We need to get consent from the parents as well as assent from the youth. And this is where, as an investigator, it's now your job to come up with creative ways of how you're going to address that problem. So here, we start with the consent. So the survey is administered in the context of a hospital or a clinic. So the youth are there with their parents. So we first of all give the survey to the parents. And the first thing is they see this consent form. This is the name of the survey, and this is the parents, right? This is the parents or legal guardian's consent. So they say, yes, I want to participate. And then we ask them questions that we want to make sure that you and your child are eligible. First of all, are you the parent or legal guardian? Yes, I am the parent. If you're not, the survey ends. This child has no business participating in the survey when this person is not even the parent or legal guardian. So if they say no, then the survey ends. Next, all right, we've ascertained that you are the parent or legal guardian. Thanks for confirming. Next, please select the statement that applies to you. Like, okay, I don't know my HIV status, sure. Now, select the statement below that applies to your child. This is a survey of children living with HIV. So the child has to be living with HIV. So if they say, I don't know the child's HIV status or prefer not to answer, the survey ends. But let's say they say the child is living with HIV. How old is the child? The survey has specific age limits for children. So yes, let's say that you say the child is 18 years or older, they don't qualify. But let's just say, let's pick this age. So based on the inclusion criteria for our study, your child is eligible to participate. Will you be willing to allow your child to complete the survey? We say yes. Yes, then we'll go on to the next. And then we'll come to the youth assent. This is for the youth, right? Now we'll provide all of this information. Now they're asking the youth, will you be willing to complete the survey? If they say no, then the survey, survey ends there and then, because the child has refused to participate. So in that case, we need both the child's assent and the parent's consent. So it's now for you to decide, right? You the investigator, you have to come up with creative ways of saying, how do I, in my particular context, and in some contexts, it may be completely fine to just display the assent form as we have it and say, let's go back to our assents. So in some cases, it might be completely fine to just say, this is the minor here, and say, yes, yes, my parent has accepted. It's all context dependent. Some things are very low risk that doesn't really need, there's no really issue. In some issues, the risk may be higher, but this is where this is why the investigator has to be trained in research. The investigator must know that all issues are not the same, and you cannot apply the same broad brush to every single thing. That context matters, and that where context demands it, we have to think creatively on how to address these problems.
Okay, Prof. So from your demonstration, I could see the linkage I was actually looking at for, because I've also done some research where the parent or the guardian or the caregiver is also expected to bring their words, to the particular location. So in that instance, we'll start off with the consent with the parents or the guardian or the caregiver, depending on the case, then gets to the child itself, assenting to participating in the process. Okay, I think so. So that linkage is there, and it's something that is doable within the platform. That at least that is established. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, the Chisquares platform gives you all the tools. Now you have to learn how, but tools are completely useless if you don't understand the underlying principles, right? So I think the principles are, so of course, whatever linkages you need, they're all provided in the form of logic, on the Chisquares platform, and you can use them however. But it's now left for you to assess the level of risk involved and then determine how you want to proceed with that. Okay, any other questions?
Thank you, Prof. Oyinda Mola Samson, your hand is up. Can you unmute?
Okay, thank you, Prof. I am grateful. I want to really appreciate you so much. I am from Agaku University, also from Department of Microbiology and Biotechnology. And I also study at Olabisi Onabanjo University at the Department of Microbiology. I want to confirm, or I want to actually confirm your thoughts and the link you gave us on the city program. I was opportuned by our linkages, the Directorate of Research, Innovation and Linkage on this city program. And we did a course on bioethics. We did 2 courses there, one on bioethics and one on conflicts of interest. And they have, I don't know if you are aware, they have an office in University of Ibadan. So, and they, after doing the course, passing the course, they came and did 2 days training for us. And with that training, we were able to, we are now eligible to apply for any grants out of the country or in US based. which I am starting to develop. So my question is that I don't know if the office or the annex they have in UI, which is in conducted by the UNILAG personnel, are they basically in charge? Because they came to take us on bioethics and and conflict of interest on how to do research and how to actually apply for grants and all. And with that certificate they gave us, we can be able to apply for any research grant in the US based. So I want to know on this particular topic, on this particular research on an ethics form, is it under those people in UI, or it's just that I can just do this course, and once I do this course on this city program as well, because I know they have numerous program, is there going to be any because we did what we called amended and follow-up training. So is there going to be follow-up training which will help us in actually getting more information, more access to all these resources that will bring our mind to? So this is where I'm really having issues, because after doing that course online that day on that city program, they came and they trained us again, and gave us another certificate. After the city program gave us certificates. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying, Prof. Sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. So I mean, we're not affiliated with City in any way. And I was just signposting City because it's it's a provider of that education. It doesn't matter who trained you. The training could come from anybody. That's not the issue. Is that, are you aware of the ethical basis of research, regardless of how it could be, so in your department that trained you, right? And provided a certificate. It doesn't matter. It's like, what matters is that you have been trained, you've been exposed to that information, regardless of where it came from, or regardless of how it was presented, whether it was online, whether it was in person, whatever. What we want to know is that this individual understands the ethical basis of research, however they got the information, whether it was from ChatGPT, as far as it's accurate information and it's presented in a way that is logical and that you understand it, whether it was all in one time or broken down into sections, it does not matter, right? So like I said, I can't speak for City because we're not affiliated, we don't work with them or for them. What I can say is that Chisquares is going to provide a fixed day where we would provide the training that you need. I will provide a certification that would say that this individual has been exposed to the basic fundamental aspects of ethics in research.
Okay. Thank you, Prof. Thank you for. I think I am grateful for that, and it's just a way to just know the information the course we give, and no matter what we get, either training physically or online, that is not what that matters. Thank you so much. I am grateful for that, and thank you for your time.
Yeah. You're welcome. Yes. Okay. Do you have any other questions? Okay, I assume there are none then. All right. If there are no further questions, thanks very much for attending, and we will see you next week. Have a great weekend.
Thank you, Prof.
You're welcome. Right. All right, ciao.
Thank you, Prof.
You're
Okay,
welcome.
before you go, sir, can you help end the
Thank you
record?
very much, Prof.
You're welcome.
Prof, we
Hi,
seriously
everyone.
appreciate you, sir.
Thank you, Prof.
Thank you,
Bye,
Prof.
everyone.
Don't forget to take the
Thank you, Prof.
evaluation.
Bye, Prof.
The attendance is on the chat. Please don't forget to take that.
Thank you.
I will share
Thank
the
you very
link
much.
again.